The wind howled across the frozen plains of Thalver 9, a world where snow and ice dominated the landscape, and the temperature was rarely warm enough to sustain life as most species knew it. This was a place where survival meant adapting to extremes that defied the imagination. For the crew of the Resolute, a deep space exploration vessel from Earth, Thalver 9 was a challenge worth tackling. It was, after all, their mission to scout new worlds, document their conditions, and survive whatever nature decided to throw at them. Captain Mira Donovan stood on the observation deck, her gloved hands gripping the metal railing as she stared out into the white expanse. The sun, distant and pale, offered little in the way of warmth or comfort. Her breath misted in the air, visible even through the heated suit she wore. Thalver 9 had been flagged as potentially valuable for its rare mineral deposits, but no one had ever managed to conduct a full survey. The extreme weather conditions and unstable magnetic fields had driven off every attempt, leaving only tales of failure and the wreckage of past expeditions. "Captain, we've received the latest atmospheric readings," said Ensign Riley, his voice crackling over the comms. He was young, barely into his 20s, and his voice carried the nervous energy of someone who is constantly learning on the job. "The storm system is moving faster than we anticipated. Estimated time until impact, 35 minutes. Mira nodded, though she knew Riley couldn't see her. "Understood, Ensign. Begin recall protocols for the survey teams." "Aye, Captain." She watched as small figures in heated suits and helmets began making their way back to the ship, trudging through snow that came up to their waists. They moved with urgency, but maintained their formation, each one tethered to the next by a cable that kept them from getting lost in the blinding winds. The crew of the Resolute had trained for this, had prepared for missions in the most inhospitable environments known to man. Yet no simulation could quite match the reality of being on a planet where the temperature could kill within minutes. Myra's gaze shifted to the horizon, where a dark line of clouds was beginning to churn and roll forward like a living entity. The storm was unlike anything she had seen before, even on Earth's worst days. It was more than a weather system. It was a force, an expression of the planet's raw, untamed power. She tapped the comms button on her wrist panel. "Survey teams, this is the captain. Double time it back to the ship. We're about to have company." The responses were immediate, a chorus of affirmations and heavy breathing. They pushed forward, faster now, with only minutes to spare. The first to reach the airlock was Dr. Alara Singh, the team's geologist. Her cheeks were flushed with cold beneath the clear visor of her helmet, and frost clung to her eyebrows like crystals. "Captain, we found traces of thalverite, just like the preliminary scan suggested," she said, her words hurried and tinged with excitement despite the urgency of the situation. "If we can just debrief inside, Doctor," Mira interrupted gently. "We need everyone secure before that storm hits." Dr. Singh nodded, stepping aside to allow the rest of the team to file in. The airlock cycled as each member entered, pressure equalizing and the interior heating systems working overtime to prevent frostbite. Mira waited until the last of the surveyors was through before making her way to the control room. The ship's interior was a stark contrast to the harshness outside. Warm lights hummed softly overhead, and the walls were lined with touchscreens and consoles displaying data streams that shifted and pulsed like a heartbeat. Ensign Riley stood by the main console, his brow furrowed as he monitored the storm's approach. "All teams are aboard, Captain," he said as she entered. He wiped a bead of sweat from his temple, an odd juxtaposition given the world they were on. "The storm's picking up speed. We'll need to lift off in under 10 minutes, or we're looking at serious damage to the hull." Mira took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the data scrolling across the console. The Resolute was built for deep space and extreme environments, but even it had limits. The storm on Thalver 9 had the potential to exceed those limits. "Engage engines," she ordered. "Prepare for immediate departure." Riley relayed the command, and a low hum reverberated through the ship as the engines powered up. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member focusing on their tasks with the precision of a team that trusted each other implicitly. The Resolute had been through its share of crises, rogue asteroids, sudden gravitational wells, and mechanical failures that had nearly spelled the end of their journey. But this storm felt different. It felt alive. The ship shuddered as the engines roared to life, heat seeping into the frame as it prepared to lift off from the icy ground. Mira kept her eyes on the viewport, watching the storm as it swept across the plains like a tidal wave. The first flurries of snow struck the ship, and the sound of ice cracking against the hull was like 1,000 tiny hammers. "Altitude control online," Riley reported, his voice tight but steady. "All systems green. Take us up," Mira commanded. The ship lurched as it lifted off, the thrusters pushing against the planet's relentless pull. The storm slammed into them full force, and the ship rocked violently, metal groaning as wind and ice clawed at it with relentless fury. For a moment, the lights flickered, and Mira felt the collective breath of the crew catch in their throats. "Compensating for wind shear," said Lieutenant Heron, the ship's navigation officer. His fingers moved deftly over the controls, making micro-adjustments to keep them steady. The ship steadied, but only just. Mira glanced at the display showing their ascent. They were rising, but the storm was like a living thing, pushing against them with all its might. A warning light flashed, and a shrill alarm cut through the hum of the engines. "Hull integrity compromised," Riley shouted, eyes wide as the damage report filled his screen. "We're taking hits to the lower decks. Divert power from non-essential systems to shields," Mira ordered, her voice calm despite the spike of adrenaline in her veins. "We're getting out of this." The Resolute shuddered again, but the shields flared with renewed strength, absorbing the brunt of the ice and wind. The ascent continued, inching toward the safety of the upper atmosphere, where the storm's grip would weaken. Mira felt the tension in the room thicken, the seconds stretching into an eternity. Then, with a final lurch, the ship broke through the storm. The viewport cleared, revealing the dark expanse of space dotted with stars. The storm raged below them, swirling and churning, but it was now a distant, impotent fury. A collective sigh of relief swept through the control room. Riley sank into his chair, his shoulders sagging as the tension ebbed away. "Hull damage is significant but manageable, Captain. We're clear?" Mira nodded, a small smile breaking through the stoic mask she wore. "Good work, everyone. Dr. Singh, you said you found traces of thalvorite?" The geologist, who had been catching her breath near the doorway, perked up. "Yes, Captain. Preliminary analysis suggests it's concentrated in the eastern mountain range. If we can set up a proper mining operation, it could be a significant find." Myra's mind raced through the possibilities. Thalvorite was rare, valued across the galaxy for its unique properties in advanced propulsion systems. If Earth could claim a source, it would change everything. But the storm had proven that Thalvor 9 was a world that demanded respect, a world that would not be conquered easily. "Noted, Doctor. We'll plan a return mission once repairs are complete and we've evaluated our options. For now, let's get some distance between us and that storm." The Resolute cruised away from Thalvor 9, its crew exhausted but alive, carrying the promise of discovery and the scars of survival. They were children of Earth, raised on a planet that taught them how to endure, to face the elements with grit and resolve. And as the ship sailed into the quiet safety of space, Mira knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would meet them head-on, just as they always had. The weeks that followed their departure from Thalvor 9 were a blur of repairs, strategy sessions, and cautious optimism. The engineering team, led by Chief Engineer Tobias Grant, worked tirelessly to patch the damage inflicted by the storm. The hull plates were reinforced, and systems that had faltered during their ascent were recalibrated and tested for resilience. The crew settled into their routines, grateful for the relative calm of deep space as they prepared for their next mission. Captain Mira Donovan spent hours poring over Dr. Singh's data on the thalvorite deposits. The geologist's findings confirmed that Thalvor 9 was rich in the mineral, enough to make the risks worth considering. But it was more than just a scientific interest that pushed Mira. It was the knowledge that a successful mining operation on Thalvor 9 could shift humanity's position within the Galactic Union. Earth's status as a rising player in the interstellar community depended on bold discoveries like this one. Captain, communications coming in from Earth Command, Ensign Riley announced one day, breaking the quiet of the control room. His voice carried a note of excitement that rippled through the crew. "Patch it through to my quarters," Mira said, standing up with a nod. She made her way down the corridor, the soft hum of the ship a comforting presence around her. In her private quarters, the holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Janice Vale, a figure Mira knew well. The Admiral's steel-gray hair and sharp eyes spoke of decades spent navigating both battlefields and boardrooms. "Captain Donovan," Admiral Vale began, her voice warm despite its authoritative edge. "I've read your initial report. Thalvarite. That's quite the discovery." "Yes, ma'am," Mira replied, keeping her posture straight. "The conditions on Thalvar 9 are extreme, but manageable with the right preparation." The Admiral's lips curved into a small smile. "You always did have a knack for understatement. I'll be honest with you, Mira, if Earth secures a steady source of Thalvarite, it will elevate our standing across the board, technologically, politically, economically. But I don't need to tell you the risks. That storm you described isn't just a hazard. It's an active deterrent." "We're aware, ma'am," Mira said, her tone even. "But we're ready to adapt. The Resolute's crew is experienced in hostile environments. With some adjustments to our approach and equipment, I'm confident we can establish a foothold on the planet." Admiral Vale's expression softened, the hint of pride glimmering in her eyes. "That's why I trust you with this, Captain. Prepare your team for a secondary mission to Thalvar 9. Earth Command will authorize additional resources to support you, including advanced storm shielding for the landing craft." "Understood, Admiral. We won't let you down." As the hologram faded, Mira let out a slow breath. This was it, the mission that could secure Earth's place in the stars. But it would come at a cost, one measured in risk and perseverance. Over the next 2 weeks, the crew worked tirelessly, implementing the new shielding and refining their plans. Dr. Singh devised more efficient methods for mineral extraction. Chief Grant oversaw the installation of reinforced heat exchangers, and Lieutenant Heron ran endless simulations to map outflight paths that could navigate the planet's treacherous weather. Finally, the day arrived. The Resolute approached Thalvar 9 once more, its hull gleaming with newly installed storm dispersal panels. The crew was quiet, focused. They knew what they were facing this time, and that knowledge was both a weapon and a burden. "Captain, all systems are go," Riley said, his voice steady despite the tension that gripped the control room. Mira nodded. "Take us in, Lieutenant Heron. Let's make history." The descent was smoother than before, the ship's new modifications holding up against the planet's volatile atmosphere. The storm roared in the distance, a reminder that Thalvar 9 did not yield easily. But the Resolute pressed on, finding a safe landing spot within the shadow of the eastern mountain range. Dr. Singh's excitement was palpable as she suited up alongside the team. "If the deposits are as rich as we think, this will change everything," she said, her voice crackling through the comms. "Let's make it count," Mira replied, leading the team down the ramp and into the icy wind. The storm loomed on the horizon, but it no longer felt insurmountable. They were ready. The mission was fraught with challenges. Equipment froze, readings shifted unexpectedly, and there were moments when the ground itself trembled, as if in protest. But the crew adapted, moving like a single, determined organism. Days turned into a week, each shift bringing new data, new samples, and new reasons to believe they could succeed. When the first full load of Thalvarite was secured and the Resolute lifted off to return to space, the cheer that erupted from the crew was like nothing Mira had ever heard. It was the sound of triumph, of a future that had been earned through sweat, grit, and unyielding spirit. In her quarters, Mira sat back and let herself feel the exhaustion, the relief, and the pride. Earth had found its place on Thalvar 9, and soon the galaxy would know that humanity was here to stay, not just as survivors, but as pioneers willing to brave whatever storm lay ahead.